This story is part of the Irish Legends series. It's called St. Brigid's Cloak. It's an old story retold by Reg Keating, and the illustrations are done by Heather McKay. Now, St. Brigid was a real woman. All faith traditions have holy men and women that they revere and tell stories about. So if you were growing up in an Islamic family, you must know about Khadija and Fatima and Ashifa, women such as that. If you were growing up in a Jewish family, you would know about Queen Esther and Ruth and Sarah and Rachel, and all around the world, whatever religion people practice, they include the stories of the holy men and women who went before them. This is a story about Brigid, who came from Kildare, south of Dublin. On this page you can see a website, monasticireland.com, that you can go to get more information about Brigid. The two famous stories about her are her cloak, and when she taught an Irish chieftain how to make a St. Brigid's cross that people still do on her feast day, February 1st in Ireland. So, here's the story. The story about St. Brigid of Kildare's amazing cloak. Brigid was the daughter of a wealthy man. She was also his slave, just as her mother had been. She spent her days cooking, cleaning, and washing. She fed pigs and milked cows on her father's farm. In summer, she tilled the crops and harvested the corn. Even though she worked from dawn till dusk, she never complained. Brigid lived at the time of St. Patrick. It was in the middle of the 400s. She listened to St. Patrick, and she became a Christian. Brigid's father was a pagan. He could not understand Brigid's wish to serve God. When Brigid was 18, she no longer worked as a slave. Her father hoped to find a husband for her, but Brigid's mind was made up. She did not want a husband. She wanted to spend her life working for God. She spent all her time looking after the poor, the sick, and the elderly. Soon, the news about Brigid spread far and wide. Young girls from all over Ireland came to join her. They wanted to be like Brigid. They wanted to help her in doing her good works. Soon there were too many girls for all of them to live on Brigid's father's farm. "Where can we find places for all these young girls?" Brigid's mother asked anxiously. "And how can we feed them all?" asked her father. "Don't worry," said Brigid. "God will provide for them." Brigid's father did not understand. "Your God does not own any land," he said. "You will need land to feed all these young girls." "The King of Leinster owns all the land around here. He will not give even the smallest piece of it to you," he told her. "My God is more powerful than you know," said Brigid. "He will persuade the King of Leinster to give me land." "Ha ha ha," laughed her father. "Fat chance you have of getting some land from the King of Leinster. He's the meanest man in all of Ireland." Brigid was not downhearted. With 4 of her young girls, she set off to find the King of Leinster. When she reached the Curragh of Kildare, she met the king, who was out hunting. The king dismounted from his horse. He approached Brigid and her friends. "Good day, ladies," he said. "How may I help you?" Brigid explained her need for some land. She told the king that the spot where they stood was the perfect place for their new home. It was beside a forest where they could collect firewood. There was a lake nearby that would provide them with water. The land was flat and fertile. It would provide good feeding for their cattle. The king looked at her and laughed. He would not give away even the worst of his land. He most certainly would not give away some of his best land. He immediately refused Brigid's request. "The forest is my best hunting ground," said the king, "and the lake is the best of the fishing waters in all of Ireland." Brigid was not downhearted. She said a little prayer to God. She asked him to soften the king's heart. Then she smiled at the king and said, "Will you give me as much land as my cloak will cover?" The king was amused. He thought it was a joke. Brigid's cloak was so small that it would cover only a tiny piece of land. Of what possible use could such a small piece of land be? He asked. I could feed all my animals and look after all my girls on such a piece of land, replied Brigid. Ho, 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 ho. The king again laughed out loud. Just for fun, he agreed. With that, Brigid removed her cloak. She spread it smoothly and evenly on the ground. Then she asked each of her 4 friends to hold a corner of the cloak. When they each held a corner, Brigid instructed them to walk in opposite directions. One walked to the north and one to the south. Another walked to the east, while the 4th walked to the west. The cloak immediately began to grow in size. The king was astonished. The cloak grew and grew until it covered many acres of land. Some of the king's hunting party fled in terror. Others realized that Brigid had divine power. They fell to the ground before her. They promised her and her girls money, food, and provisions. The king knelt before Brigid. From this moment on, he said, anything you ask for, I will gladly give it to you. Soon afterwards, the king became a Christian and gave much to the poor. Brigid's miracle of the cloak was the first of many miracles that she worked for the people of Ireland. And that is the story from the Irish Legends series, retold by Reg Keating and illustrated by Heather McKay. Saint Brigid's Cloak.